Hello everybody and welcome to Decoding the WSL, the podcast dedicated to the stats and facts in the WSL. On today's episode we're going to be having a look at just the 4 games this weekend, but also taking a look at the breaking news today. Gareth Taylor has left Manchester City with Nick Cushing taking charge. I'm your host, Sam Biccarino.
And I'm Tom Maher.
Yes, hello listener, welcome to Decoding the WSL. We are looking ahead to game week 16 in the WSL and I've got Tom Maher with me. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm good, Sam. Thank you so much for having me on today's show. It's always a pleasure. And yeah, some breaking news for us as well to get our teeth sunk into.
Yeah, thank you for coming back. It is your second appearance. I obviously didn't scare you away too much the first time, but yeah, Tom messaged me, 20 minutes ago, just in case I hadn't seen it, which to be honest, I hadn't at the time because I was out. But yeah, Gareth Taylor has been, has departed Manchester City. I was going to say he's been sacked, but I should probably use the terminology that is fair and that Manchester City have used. I'm just looking at the Man City statement at the moment on the website. It says, Manchester City women have parted ways with head coach Gareth Taylor. Taylor has a long-standing association with Manchester City, having been both a former player and having undertaken various roles within the boys' academy prior to joining NCWFC in 2020. And there's a lot more to it. Obviously, I'm not going to read out the whole thing. They do say we would like to place on record our thanks to Gareth for all of his efforts during his many years at City. Our FA Cup and League Cup triumphs will remain special moments in the history of the football club. We wish him all the best for the future. And they do say that former Manchester City women's coach Nick Cushing will succeed Gareth on an interim basis for the remainder of the season. It's a lot to take in because I wasn't particularly expecting this was going to happen. I know there were a few rumours flying about him going to other jobs, for example, in the NWSL, but I thought with them being in the competitions they're in, I thought he would be in till the end of the season. As it comes as a shock to you?
Yeah, I think the timing of it, like you said, more so than anything else. I mean, City are still in all 4 competitions, as much as they have to beat Chelsea. I mean, the timing as far as having 4 games against Chelsea in a row to come is pretty daunting stuff for Nick Cushing. I mean, against an unbeaten Chelsea side, yeah. I mean, I suppose this week I wonder when they made the decision. You have to wonder that West Ham draw probably was the final nail in the coffin, I'd say, for him. And I wonder if they were getting things in place before then. Yeah, because obviously they've won against Aston Villa at the weekend, got through to semi-finals of the FA Cup. I think what's ultimately done it for him, obviously, is the league form and how that defeat to Everton. And yeah, I mean, City going from basically having the title in their hands with 2 games to go last season to, really having to fight for their place in the Champions League now this season to qualify for it next season. So yeah, I think Nick Cushing will do a good job as interim manager. He's the only manager to win the WSL at Manchester City. So, he seems like a good name to steady the ship. Yeah, I mean, what are your kind of thoughts on it, Sam, at the moment?
I think that they definitely must have had something in place or sort of an expectation, because you don't just make this sort of statement and say Nick Cushing's going to be succeeding for the rest of the season, and that's a decision that's been made this afternoon. So, because obviously they played in the FA Cup this weekend, but I think you mentioned to me before we started recording that you were at the game on Wednesday, and it was a bit of a frosty press conference afterwards. He wasn't in the best mood, I guess, as you would expect when you drop points. Yeah. When you're looking to get into the Champions League, into the top 3, and you're dropping points to a team in the bottom half. I'm quite, like I mentioned earlier, I'm quite surprised by it because I thought he would stay to the end of the season, especially with the 4 games against Chelsea in a row and with obviously the cup final coming up. But one thing that I guess to try and spin a positive on it is for Manchester City anyway, is that it will make them a bit more a bit more random, almost a bit more hard to
Yeah.
predict, because Chelsea will know roughly what sort of system they're going to play under Gareth Taylor. They'll know what sort of thing to plan for. Whereas now, at the start of these 4 games, they don't quite know what Nick Cushing's going to do. They'll obviously have done their research and will do their research further about what he used to do at Man City, what he's done at jobs since then. But who knows what's going to happen? Aside from the fact that he's probably going to start Yui Hasegawa and Bunny Shaw, we don't really know what's going to happen in this game and how Manchester City are going to play. I'm really, actually, as a neutral, I'm quite excited by it.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting.
It seems a bit hard. Yeah, it's. I feel bad saying I'm excited for it because Gareth Taylor seemed like a really nice guy and seemed like I thought he was doing a relatively good job at City. But I guess they want to take that next step. They want to be doing better than they are this season and probably close the gap on Chelsea in future seasons.
Yeah.
City are a team that will make those sort of big signings. Not every team will, but Manchester City will be one of those teams to invest in their women's team.
Yeah.
And maybe, they just think that Gareth Taylor's not the one anymore. Maybe it's got too stale. Maybe, I don't know if there's anything with the Chloe Kelly situation that's affected this as well. But I'm a little bit excited to see what comes from this.
For sure. I think that I think Gareth Taylor, having not won the league the whole time he was at City, really doesn't paint his time at City in the best light. I think I have sympathy with him. I mean, when I spoke to him on Wednesday, he was saying how, I was asking like why Miedema and Shaw started on the bench, like were they not fit or what was kind of the situation there? And like they obviously came on and changed the game and played really well. Miedema set Bunny Shaw up for the opening goal that looked for the longest time like it was going to be the winner for City. For City. Sorry, my dog's in the background. I don't know if you can see that, but yeah. So I asked him about that after the match, and he said something along the lines that they aren't able to play 3 games in 7 days. Like we have to manage them, and when you sign a player like Vivian Miedema, she's one of the best players this country's ever seen, but you can't expect her to be injury free and be able to play every game. And 3 games in 7 days, I doubt she would have been able to do that in the later part of her Arsenal career as well. So, I think to a degree there's something, as all of the teams chasing Chelsea struggle with, it feels like squad depth and investing that extra bit more to have a full, to be able to stay in the title race when Khadija Shaw is injured for a game or two, to not have your season implode with Alex Greenwood being injured, to have those players who can step up, especially at centre defence for City. That's been a huge issue for them since Greenwood's gone off or injured her ACL. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's been surprisingly the biggest miss. I would have always thought that maybe Lauren Hemp or Bunny Shaw would be Manchester City's. If you asked me at the start of the season who's going to be Manchester City's most important player, I'd have probably said one of those two, or maybe even Yui Hasegawa. But you can see the difference. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but the difference in their points per game and the amount of goals they concede per game with Greenwood in the side this season compared to without her is really stark. I think it was something like less than a goal per game they conceded, and it was about 2 or 3 without her. Which shows that as good as players like Kirsten Kasperai, Leia Alexandri, and Rebecca Knack obviously has come in as well. As good as these sort of players are, then just not quite Alex Greenwood, which, let's be honest, not many people are. It's fair enough. She is a very elite player. She made the World 11 last year for a reason.
Yeah. And then Rebecca Knack is obviously out as well now at the moment, injured.
Yeah, she obviously came in as almost like a Greenwood replacement for at least the rest of this season, and I guess hopefully a longer term signing as well. But yeah, when you've got the injuries that they've had, obviously Lauren Hemp's been out for a while as well. Bunny Shaw was out for a bit. When you've got these major players and they just don't have the depth that a team like Chelsea has, they probably have as much depth as Man United and Arsenal, for example. But Manchester City is, as the men have been for a number of years, and I think they expect their women's team to be the same, competing for titles, whether that's domestically or European. And it's not happening at the moment, and they've decided they need to change. But all big things. And a pod, I would say as well, we were planning to record at this time anyway. So we started, it was about 5:30, almost 6:00 now on Monday night. We're recording at this time anyway. It's not just an emergency podcast. But thank you, Man City, for aligning your press releases at the same time as our podcast. It's been very useful for us.
We appreciate you, Man City.
I do appreciate you in that regard. Although, as an Arsenal fan, I do hope this doesn't work out for you. Let's move on to the games coming up this weekend. There are obviously only 4 games coming up this weekend. There are 2 on Friday. Arsenal will be making the long journey on a Friday night up to Walton Hall Park to face Everton, the most informed team outside the top 4. Arsenal aren't the only top 4 side travelling to Merseyside on Friday, though. Manchester United are away at Liverpool, the team that beat them to a top 4 place last season. The other 2 are on Sunday, starting with a 6-pointer in the relegation battle. I'm really excited for this game. Villa travel to Palace, the Palace side that will be needing to get their first home win of the season if they're to maintain any hope of staying up. And then finally, it's the game at Brisbane Road. Spurs will move into the top half and above their visitors if they can beat a Brighton side that's not won any of their last 7 in the league. But we're going to start with the games on Friday night. Yes, the first game on Friday night is Everton hosting Arsenal. This one is 7 p.m. on the Friday night. Everton, like I said, have the best form in the bottom 8 at the moment. They have 6 points from their last 4 games. Arsenal, however, are a very strong side against Everton. They have not lost Everton in their last 25 meetings. The last time Arsenal beat Everton was in July 2011. Ellen White opened the scoring for Arsenal before Everton came back, scored 3. I think Tony Duggan got the last one. So it's not looking great for Everton in terms of the head-to-head. It's very much in Arsenal's favour, but Everton have turned a bit of a corner recently. What are your sort of expectations for this game?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this one. I think it's interesting what you were saying there. Obviously, one of the things that Brian Sorensen loves to say to the media is that, like, one of his Brian Sorensenisms, if you will, he loves saying, we're flying while we're building the plane. So obviously, in other words, he's trying to still implement things with this team while he's still building the team. And it feels like at the start of the season, it felt like that wasn't really working. They had some really difficult performances, and obviously, like, probably their best performance at the start of the season was that 0-0 draw at the Emirates against Arsenal, which was one of the main reasons I think that Jonas Eidevall ended up losing his job, or that he ended up resigning. But yeah, so I think that we're closing in more on what this built plane is going to look like for Brian Sorensen's team. I think they had a doubleheader against Chelsea. I thought they were a little bit unlucky with refereeing decisions in those 2 games, especially in that second game when it was 1-1. They really looked like they were going to close in on a draw, and they probably did deserve it on the balance of play. I think their big issue this season has been scoring goals, really, because I think they've got the 10th most XG this season. So, I think it's only Crystal Palace and who are below them, and another team. I forget the other team, but But I think when you're thinking about the players who have really put their heads above the parapet, really helped Everton towards succeeding in terms of turning their form around, you'd have to think of Honoka Hayashi, she's such a leader, and she scored some really vital goals. She scored that important leveler early in the season against Palace. She scored a second goal against Villa last weekend, and the winner against Manchester City as well. And, when you're looking at important players for them, you'd also have to put Courtney Brosnan in that category. Probably the best keeper in the league over the last 3 seasons. This season, she has the 3rd highest save percentage in the league, behind Fallon Tellis-Joyce and Daphne van Domselaar, but she's made almost double the amount of saves that those other two have. So, and no keeper's faced more shots on target than Brosnan this season with 92. So, she's a big leader for them. She's part of the leadership group at Everton since Megan Finnegan's ACL. She's taken a lot more of that responsibility. And, a win on Friday night would put them sixth. So that would be really, really, obviously, really help them as far as looking further up the table. What's been your experience of them this season? How have you enjoyed watching them, Sam?
Everton I think they've definitely been a side that have improved over the course of the season. I had them, from memory, I think I had them 10th or 11th in my sort of pre-season predictions. In fact, I think I had them 10th because I think I had Palace and West Ham below them. West Ham, however, are, as well as Brighton, as well as Everton, another team that are making me look silly because they're both doing a lot better than I expected them to. Honoka Hayashi, like you said, she's been fantastic. I would have always said that Claire Wheeler was probably Everton's best player going into this season, not just in that midfield space, but their best player. But Honoka Hayashi has been the game changer. I know one of my sort of all-time favourite stats as such is actually an Everton one. It was a few years ago when Lukaku used to play for the men's team and they got into European football, and it was that if you took all of Lukaku's goals out of their league games, Everton would have still finished in the same position because he was just scoring goals that made it 3-0 and 4-0 rather than ones that made it 1-0 and 2-1. Honoka Hayashi is the opposite of that. He's not a player that's scoring as many goals as, Alessia Russo or Bunny Shaw or Beth England, but she's scoring really important goals. And I think Courtney Brosnan, like you mentioned, is probably one of the best keepers in the league. She's got the third best goals prevented this season. Only Van Domselaar and Tillis-Joyce have got better, and Van Domselaar's is only 0.1 better. So she's been fantastic. I've been saying for a while that she's the best keeper in the bottom half. But if Everton keep this up, she won't be the best keeper in the bottom half because they'll be in the top half. They are a team in really good form, and I think Brian Sorensen's got something really good going. Everton have obviously had new ownership come in the last few months. You often see when new ownership comes in, they replace the manager. They've done it on the men's side. But on the women's side, I'm glad they've stuck with Sorensen for Everton's sake because it's working. It's not just that they brought in players that, yes, they'll have put some budget into that, and players like Hayley Ladd, players like Kelly Gargo's sort of come into form. And I think that's helped some of the players that are there already as well. But they've not just sacked their manager to make these changes happen and to get the players on form and on song. So I think a lot of credit needs to go to not just the players, not just Brian Sorensen, but to the club because they seem to be doing all the right stuff at Everton. Like you say, the last time they met was the draw at the Emirates 0-0. The time they met before that was the sort of this fixture last season, which was 1-1. Izzy Hobson equalising late on. I think she came on at the time she was the youngest player in the WSL. She was certainly the youngest ever goal scorer. But it'll be interesting to see what comes in this game. I did a little bit of digging around in the stats, and I did see that over half of Everton's goals in the WSL this season have come 15 minutes either side of half time. So either in the last 15 minutes of the first half or the first 15 minutes of the second half. And I'm intrigued to, I wouldn't know without asking him. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance yet, but I'd be intrigued to know if that's any sort of tactic from Brian Sorensen, that they sort of start the match in a way of saying, look, you're not going to score past us, and they end the match like that. And it's the bit in the middle where they try and grind these teams down. We'll have to see what comes on I was about to say on Saturday, but on Friday night. I think the fact that it's on Friday night might have a bit of an effect on this. Arsenal obviously have a very good fan base, and they get a lot of following. But when it's 7 p.m. in Merseyside, I think it's going to be probably one of the games that Arsenal are going to have the fewest supporters at. I'm sure there will be some supporters that live in Liverpool that will go to this game, but they won't have much compared to Everton. Everton are going to be making it probably quite a horrible match for Arsenal to play, not just the players, but the club generally, and the fan base. So I think this could end up being a game that's not necessarily scrappy, but I think they're going to try and capitalise on the fact that Arsenal have obviously gone out of the Cup this weekend as well, of the FA Cup, losing to Liverpool, and Everton are going to be trying to be the second half of Merseyside to do them in. I actually wouldn't be surprised to see Arsenal drop some points in this game. I think if you had to make me pick a scoreline, I'd probably say a 2-1 Arsenal win, but it's not out of the realms of possibility for Everton to pick up 1, maybe even 3 points if they can make it difficult for Arsenal. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Arsenal are probably looking the most vulnerable they have since Sleggers took over. I think a big part of that is the difficulties they've been having at Meadow Park at the moment. They're struggling to play the way that they want to play there. The pitch is not in a great condition, and Boreham Wood played on that pitch on Saturday before that defeat to Liverpool on Sunday in the Cup. So it's already not in a great way, and I think it really affects their style of play because they're a team that like to get the ball down and pass and play around teams, and they're obviously not a particularly tall team, and that really plays into Liverpool's hands in the way that Liverpool want to compete in the air. I think that when you're looking at the way that Arsenal want to play, so when I spoke to Renee Sleggers on Friday, and I think Tim Stillman was asking her about the pitch, and she said, we want to play the Arsenal play, so we want to be very good on the ball, but we also want to find ways to win. And obviously they struggled to do that on the weekend. I think you could see that in the subs that Sleggers had. Like late on, she was trying to bring on some height. Ilestead came on, went up front 5'10". She came on full forward, who's 5'5". Blacksenius came on then 5'9". For Little, who's 5'4". They were trying to kind of have some aerial threat. And I suppose that I think that could force Sleggers maybe make it a little bit easier to go to Walton Hall Park because it's a hybrid grass pitch, so it should be in good condition. They might suit their game more. They'll also have Chloe Kelly back, who was obviously cup tied on the weekend, former Everton player as well. We know how she likes to score against her former clubs. And yeah, I mean, Sleggers also spoke about Chloe Kelly on Friday, and I thought I was really interested in what she said. She said, I think the way she trains, the way she contributes to the team, her feistiness, her willingness to win, her competitiveness, I'm very impressed with those things, and she's helping the team move the team forward. And obviously they didn't have that on the weekend, didn't have that fresh influence, and obviously it was her goal that brought Arsenal back into the game against West Ham when they were struggling at Meadow Park again. I think I wouldn't be surprised. I think I know what you mean with Everton. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to maybe capitalise on Daphne van Domselaar maybe being a bit low on confidence after the game on the weekend. The goal that Arsenal conceded, I don't think was her fault at all, but she seemed to take it take it to heart. There was a few times where she looked a bit. I don't know if it was the pitch that she was unsure about, but she had a few chances. I think once in the first half, once in the second half, where Sophie Roman-Hogg closed her down, and Arsenal were probably lucky not to concede on one of those occasions. And I wonder if Everton might try to exploit that. And then I think also for Arsenal, they've got Real Madrid in Madrid on Tuesday night. So I wonder whether that might affect Sleggers' kind of team selection. It's a really busy time for them. Obviously, they played Liverpool yesterday. They've got 5 more games before the end of the month. So, yeah, I think I'm very much in a similar camp to you, Sam. I think that Arsenal will win, but it's not going to be easy for them. Everton aren't going to make it easy for them. But yeah, I think Arsenal will bounce back from defeat on the weekend.
Yeah, I think something I hadn't really thought about, to be honest, was the rotation that you mentioned, because obviously they do have Real Madrid in midweek, and it's not quite the same as Chelsea. Chelsea have basically got the league wrapped up, and they're going to be really prioritising the other competitions. Arsenal are still in a bit. They're only 1 point ahead of Man City, albeit with a game in hand, which obviously is the one on Friday. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go about their squad selection with that big game coming up, because the Champions League is still really important, but as is the league. They can't take these games for granted. It's not like they're playing a team like Palace, where against Palace that they're probably going to concede a lot of goals. It's not like they're playing against a team like Leicester City, where Leicester City probably aren't going to score many, even if you can't score many yourself. Everton are a bit more unpredictable at the moment in terms of how the game will go and how to set up against them. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what comes. The other game on Friday, also in Merseyside, as I mentioned, is Liverpool against Man United. Liverpool haven't played a home game in any competition since the 2nd of February. They've played 4 games in that space, 3 wins, all with a clean sheet. The last 3 were all wins, all with a clean sheet. So Liverpool are really a team in form at the moment, as you can sort of see from that, albeit they're not all against WSL teams. But at home, it's a bit of a different story. They've only scored 6 in 7 home games this season. So attacking-wise, they're not really firing on all cylinders. They do have some of their more attacking players, like Sophie Roman-Hall, back now. She's obviously out for quite a while. But Manchester United, on the other hand, have the best defence in the league. They've conceded the fewest goals. They've won 7 games in a row. There's a bit of a case of, is it a case of a poor attack versus an excellent defence? Therefore, Manchester United won't concede and it's going to be an easy win? Or do you see this playing out in another way?
Yeah, I gave up a long time ago trying to predict what happens when Liverpool and Man United meet in the WSL, because it seems like it's just all that. It's the Wild West out there, really. But I think it's interesting. All the kind of statistics are pointing towards that. I think it's a good point you make about the clean sheets Liverpool had recently. Obviously, under Amber Whiteley now, they've got 100% records. Obviously, it's only 2 games, but they haven't conceded a goal either. And they lost, 4-0 earlier in the season against United away. But I think they didn't have Marie Hobinger, wasn't in the squad. I think she was injured at that time, and I think she is a really key player for them. She's got the highest dead ball passes leading to a shot attempt of any player in the WSL this season. And I think a big feature of that win, as I remember it correctly, was that Dominique Janssen was really important to United in that game. I think she scored a goal. She completely ran the show and bossed the midfield. And there's a potential that Liverpool could go into that game with a completely new midfield. They could have Hobinger obviously back from injury. They'll have obviously got Julia Bartel on loan from Chelsea, and Sam Kerr, not that one, on loan from Bayern, of course, Scottish Sam Kerr. And they've all, especially Sam Kerr's done well since she's come on board with Liverpool. So I think it's going to be a different proposition to the game that they played. And, they're on a high in December, but Liverpool are on a high as well. They've just made the FA Cup final for the first time in 8 years, semi-final, for the first time in 8 years. And I thought in that game, Olivia Smith was exceptional. She caused so many problems for Arsenal with her direct running. She's been really bright for Liverpool throughout this season, and she has the 3rd most successful take-ons in the league, and the joint most successful take-ons that led to a goal as well. But then you're looking at Man United, and like you say, their brilliant defence. And to counter that exact stat, the 2 highest percentages of attempts to tackle dribblers that were successful have been made by Man United players. Any guesses who they are? You probably know, you are the stats man, Sam, but any guesses which United defenders they are?
Listeners won't know this, but I've been, you might be able to tell that I've been looking through some sort of website as you were talking, and it happens to be FBref, so I do have it in front of me right now. So yeah, I probably can guess it. Is it Jade Revio, Millie Turner by any chance?
Wow. Stats man strikes again. Yeah, I should have known better. You come at the king, you best not miss,
Yeah, exactly. I'm Stattorino for a reason.
But yeah, I think it's going to be a really, obviously it's always interesting. And, from a United perspective, you've got Ella Toone flying. She's got another goal weekend in the Cup. And like you said, Liverpool haven't been settling in at St Helens, they've really been struggling there, and United. I think that United will win. They've been getting the results they need. They're on a very similar run to a couple of seasons ago when they managed to get the title race down to the last day of the season. So yeah, and then obviously added spice is the fact that this might not even be the last Liverpool versus Man United match of the season, because we could see it again at Wembley in May.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see, because I think it's Chelsea and Man City, the other two teams, still in the cup, aren't they? And yeah, I think, well, obviously Chelsea and Man City love playing each other, so they'll be wanting to get to the final. But yeah, I'd love to see some other teams get there. I'd love to see Manchester United get there again, because it's just something a bit different. But Liverpool, I think, would be a team. There's a little bit, well, with both teams, to be honest, or both clubs, I should say, rather than the teams. There's a little bit of, well, they aren't really owned by people that want to invest in the women's team. So there's a little bit of I kind of don't want them to then do well. I don't want them to not invest and then do well. I don't want to sort of get the reward for that. But we'll have to wait and see what comes of that. I thought it's quite interesting how these two teams have really differed this season compared to last season. Obviously, Liverpool pipped Manchester United to fourth place right near the end of last. It sort of seemed like it was right near the end of the season, but I think it was 6 points in the end, the difference. So a couple of games. But this season, Manchester United have got double the amount of points that Liverpool have got. And it's not like we're only a few games in. We're 16 games in now, or 15 games in, I think, for these teams. 36 points for Man United and 18 for Liverpool. Man United have really turned a corner and kept challenging that top three. There's such a big gap between, well, I was going to say between fourth and fifth. Don't forget that Man United are actually in second and looking pretty good value for it. They're obviously on a 7-match winning streak in the WSL as well.
Yeah.
And have only conceded 6 goals all season. They are the lowest scorers of the top 4 with 29 goals in 15 games, which still isn't bad. 2 goals a game. Most teams would be pretty happy with that. Well, obviously 8 teams in the league definitely would, because it's more than them. But in terms of how I think this game's going to go, I think Manchester United's defensive qualities are going to be really important, because I think players like Olivia Smith, I don't think are going to be that influential in this game because of, like you said earlier, Man United are really good at dealing with dribblers. What Liverpool are really good at is their aerial threat, and that's not an area that I think Man United are as good at. Maya Letitia and Millie Turner are quite good in the air, but I think the rest of the squad aren't as good as a lot of the Liverpool squad. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Liverpool, if they're going to score in this game, score from something like a corner or a free kick that's whipped in. Sophie Roman-Hogg is obviously going to be trying to get ahead on something, because she is by far and away the person that wins the most headers in the league, and she's not actually played that many games to be at the top of that list. I think Man United probably will come out with a clean sheet, because I think they'll do the right things to not give away a corner and to not give away a free kick in a dangerous position. I think they're clever enough to think that far ahead. And then in attack, it only takes them a moment sometimes to get a good result. When you've got players like, obviously Mallard is now in good form. She's got a goal and assist in their last WSL game. You've got players like Leah Galton going forward. Obviously Ella Toone and Grace Clinton, and all these players that, even with Elizabeth Turland out, you're still like, actually, they've still got quite a good strike force going. They're still really threatening against a Liverpool side that are really good in the air, but maybe aren't the quickest and maybe aren't so good at defending against the dribblers. So I think it's going to be a case of Liverpool are going to try and beat Man United in the air. Man United are going to try and beat Liverpool on the floor. And I think, well, the St Helens Stadium, unless, I don't know if St Helens have a game on Thursday night, that'll probably work in Liverpool's favour if they do, but I doubt it.
They can arrange one.
Yeah, just get the under-18s in or something to play a friendly, ruin the pitch. Yeah, I do think Liverpool are going to struggle in this game. They did win this fixture last season, 1-0 with a Jenna Clark goal. I think from memory, it was likely a header. But I think Man United will probably edge this game. But I can see it being like a 1-0 and being that close. What would be your score prediction?
Yeah. I think I'm going to go. I think on a similar line to yourself. I think that Maybe Liverpool will probably just not have enough. I think United will probably win 2-1, would be my guess.
Well, your game will be more exciting than mine, at least. Let's move on to Sunday's games. This is, despite the fact it doesn't have my team in it, it is the game that I'm looking forward to the most this year. It's this weekend. Sunday at 2 o'clock, 12th versus 11th, last versus second last, 10 points versus 6 points from 15 games each. Doesn't sound like the best game of the weekend, but I think there's just so much riding on this. It's Crystal Palace hosting Aston Villa. Crystal Palace haven't won in their last 12 games. They haven't won at home this season. This is all in the WSL. But Villa haven't won away. So if this game isn't a draw, one of those streaks is broken. Both teams have lost their last 3 matches in all competitions, and neither team have scored in their last 2 games. So neither team are going in with great form. They've both got 1 point from their last 5 games as well in the league. And it's just going to be 2 teams that are in a bit of a different area at the moment in terms of a bit of a different space in terms of, Aston Villa are starting with their new manager, Natalie Arroyo. They've had a bit of time with her now. Crystal Palace have obviously not long started with their new manager, Lee Smirud, much less time than Aston Villa have had. And I'm so interested to see how this game plays out. What about you?
Yeah, I'm so with you on this. This is the game that I'm really excited for this weekend as well. I mean, the WPL need to look at this game if they want to, because this would just be a nothing match if we didn't have relegation. This is why relegation is needed in the league. A game like this, I couldn't agree more. I think Palace really they impressed on the weekend, I think, against Chelsea, because they were playing in their first ever FA Cup quarter final, and to only lose 1-0, I think Chelsea were wasteful in front of goal, but they were missing key players for Crystal Palace. Lexi Potter has been huge for them, and she is obviously on loan from Chelsea, so she wasn't able to play, and she's had the most blocks of any player in the league this season with 40. And I think they got a few injuries as well, so it led to them not having much of a bench at all. So they had Fliss Gibbons, who is usually a fullback. She had the most assists in the Championship last season. She started at centre-back, and she was fantastic. She didn't stop running. She didn't stop giving everything for the team, and ended up limping off at the end. And just to really put a fine point on how stretched Crystal Palace were in this game, they brought Elise Hughes off the bench, and she played at centre-back. She came on and played at centre-back for the last 15 minutes of the match. That's kind of the level of how much they were struggling for squad depth in this game. And to only lose 1-0 is quite impressive. I mean, like you said, they really never looked like scoring in this game, though, is the only thing. And they haven't scored on Elise Smirud in either of the 2 games that they've played in. But there was real standout players like Molly May Sharp and Clarissa Laresse were really good yesterday. And yeah, they've had. It's not to say they haven't had a chance in that Liverpool game. They probably should have scored. I think Larkin was played through by Blanchard, and she probably should have put it past Rachel Laws in the Liverpool goal, but Laws made a really good save. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what formation Smirud comes out with, because it was 4-4-2 against Liverpool, and then kind of switched to a 4-3-1-2 against Chelsea. But both times, Ashley Verdon and Clarissa Larisse started up front. And I'd just be interested to see if, given they haven't scored any goals in either of those games, if Elise Hughes or Katie Stengel might come in place of one of those two, to try and increase that goal threat up front for Crystal Palace. I mean, what have you made of them? What you've seen under Leaf Smirud?
I think they're starting to turn the corner a little bit. I did like Laura Kaminsky, so it was I was kind of disappointed, but that was purely just because she seems like a nice person, rather than because I think Palace are doing so well. They're obviously rock bottom of the league. They're currently 4 points off, and I think they were similar then. Might have been 3, but they definitely need an injection of something. And I don't think that changing manager is a bad shout, to be honest. I think that Laura Kaminsky probably did as much as she could. She obviously got them up, scoring a hell of a lot of goals last season with, as you mentioned, Elise Hughes, the centre-back, scoring most of them. I think something that I'd be quite intrigued to see is, like you said about how they line up, I think Ashley Veerden is a really good player. I think she's a bit under the radar. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see her move to sort of a bigger WSL team in the future, like a Liverpool, maybe even a Man United, that kind of team, because I think she does have that much potential. I'm surprised not to see more of Annabelle Blanchard recently, because she's another player that scores. Well, she is their top scorer this season, albeit with 3 goals in the league. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a bit of her, but I think they know that they need to score goals in this game. Aston Villa are not a team that concedes loads of XG and loads of chances, but they do concede a decent amount of goals. They conceded just under 2 goals a game so far in the WSL this season. And when they played last, Aston Villa won the game 3-2, and it needed an Ebony Salmon screamer in the 90th minute to win the game. She's obviously not a player that plays that much for Villa. And yeah, I don't know what the XG was on that chance, but I'd guess not a lot. So it was a game that Palace really could have, and they had quite a few at the start of the season that they were just a goal off. They were just not quite there. And I think you can see now that the players have had a bit of an injection. I think the last few games under Kaminsky looked like there were a few players that were being carried by the rest. I think I mentioned on the pod as well. I think it was Lily Woodham in one of the games was just, her body language was looking around like, why have you made that decision at her fellow teammates? Why haven't you been able to make that pass? And almost just trying to get her teammates to have standards that were good enough for this league. And I think the change of manager is helping that. I don't know if it will be quite good enough in this game, but that's why I'm excited for it. I think if Palace don't win this game, or if Palace lose this game, I should say, I think that probably is pretty much season done. It will be 6 games to go. They'll be in last place with 6 points. Leicester will be in 11th with 12, so double the points. And I just don't think they can make up a point a game towards the end of the season. Saying that, if they manage to draw 4 points in 6 games, unlikely but doable. If they manage to win this game, not only is it closing the gap on 11th place, they'll only be 1 point behind Villa, but it's also a real statement, not just statement of intent, but a sort of a big confidence boost to the team to say, look, yes, we're not doing very well. Yes, we've not picked up many points recently, but we are a team that can get these results, and there is proof of it. I think the other player that I wanted to mention as well, you mentioned her earlier, is Lexi Potter. I think she's been so important for them this season. She obviously helped them get promoted last season, went on loan again to Crystal Palace this season. I don't know what will go on after that. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if she ended up moving there permanently, if they managed to stay up. Chelsea have so many players in midfield, and as much as Lexi Potter's fantastic and she's very young still, I don't think she's going to make that Chelsea side at any point. I don't think she's going to be that elite enough for Chelsea, but she's definitely a good enough player to play at a decent WSL side. If Palace stay up, she's had a couple of years there already. She looks like she enjoys it, like the team around her and playing at that club. I wouldn't be surprised to see her stay, and that will be a really big help for them. But all these things don't happen if Crystal Palace lose this game. I think there's more than just 3 points on the line here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really interesting what you said about Lily Woodham as well, because there was none of that on Sunday. The team were really completely together. You couldn't pick one out who wasn't giving their all, and Lily Woodham was fantastic as well. Within that, I suppose, like with Aston Villa, what do Aston Villa fans have to kind of give them hope from their perspective, do you think?
I think Aston Villa, I mean, they've won only 2 games this season, so that's not looking fantastic. Like I mentioned, they've not won away from home in the league this season, but they have put in really good performances throughout. I think even under Robert De Boer, he was getting really good performances out of them, but just weren't getting it over the line. I think if you looked at the underlying numbers from a lot of the games, you look at things like the possession and the progressive passes and the XG and basically how threatening they were doing really well. Players like Anna Patton and Lucy Parker at centre back were having really good games, but it just wasn't quite enough. There was always just something. There was a moment here or there that was letting them down. I think they have had, well, I assume a bit of a cash injection because obviously Kenza Dali and Adriana Leon have both gone over to, I think they've actually both gone to the same club. They've both gone to San Diego. Yeah, so they've both left the club, which are 2 really big losses, but potentially a bit of a cash injection that might come in the summer, unless it's all gone to Natalia Arroyo. Who knows? But I think Palace, I think Villa know that they do have the quality to put in performances to stay up. And a lot of these players are players that have either been here for a while and were in that season where Carla Ward took them up to 5th place, or they are players that have come in with a good reputation or really good potential. I don't really see many players in this Aston Villa side where you expect them to make a mistake, where you expect them to have a bad game, you expect them to not be good enough to beat Crystal Palace. There's a lot of high quality players in the side, and I think they just need this switch somewhere, and it's going to happen at some point, and they've just got to pray that it happens in enough time before the end of the season to make a difference
Yeah,
in the WSL.
yeah, I completely agree. I think Natalia Arroyo is a really exciting manager, and I think it's been a disappointing start, but it has only been 4 games, I suppose, that she's been in charge. And she managed to keep Sean Goater on her staff, which I think was a really shrewd call. He did a good job when he was interim, and probably, helped Villa to their best form this season, really, when he was in charge. I think what she's been struggling to implement is her play style with Villa. Like at Sociedad, she pressed very, very high, really put as much pressure on the opposition as possible. She guided them to 2nd place in Liga FA, and they were in the Copa de la Reina final last year too. And I think she really struggled to implement that. In those 2 defeats to Leicester and Everton, Villa dominated possession. They had a lot more possession, but really struggled to create anything out of that possession. And I was just looking back before this, just doing a bit of research before this podcast, and I was looking back at their recent games, and in every single game under Natalia Arroyo, a defensive error has led directly to a goal against Aston Villa. And I just that needs to stop. You cannot be giving the opposition a goal every game. Again on Sunday it was Mary Taylor who lost possession, and City scored a goal. Jess Park scored, and then in the last round of the cup, Lucy Parker lost possession, leading to Nikita Paris goal. Against Everton, D'Angelo fumbled the ball and Hayashi found the net. And then against Leicester, Nobbs headed it into the path of Shana Chaussonet, and she plays it across to Momiki, who finds the net. So I think that they cannot continue to do that if they want to win on Sunday. They cannot if they want to stay in the league, really. And yeah, I think Kirsty Hansen's a big positive for them. She's had the most successful take-ons, leading to a shot attempt in the league this season. So she then get that direct running going, then I think that'd be really positive. I think Crystal Palace were a bit susceptible to that against Chelsea on Sunday. There was a lot of times when Aggie Beaver-Jones just picked up the ball from deep, drove at the Palace defence, and was able to get a shot on goal. Obviously didn't score, but and obviously with Lauren James as well, she did similar. So, and I know those 2 players are exceptionally good, but Kirsty Hansen's a very good player as well. So And like on that note, Villa have so much quality in their side in attacking areas. They've got Rachel Daly, Ebony Salmon, Katie Robinson, all players who can score a goal. So if they can cut out theirs at the back, then and let those players do their thing in front of goal, then you'd hope they can win. I'm really worried that this is going to be a 0-0 draw. I've got to say, Sam, I'm really worried because the stats point towards it being a 0-0 draw. But what do you say? What do you think? Can you give me some hope on this one being a good game?
I am praying that we haven't just spent 10, 15 minutes, whatever it is, talking about this game for it to be a 0-0 draw, because that would be sad. I think that it's going to leave it as game on. I'd love something to happen for it to either be a Palace win and they're only 1 point behind and let's go, or it's going to be a Villa win and it's a bit of a story that's kept them up this season. I think this is going to finish. I think it's going to have some goals in it because I think that both teams are capable of scoring. But it's just that both teams are capable of conceding a few as well. I'm going to go for 1-1. And I think that it's going to be a 1-1 with Palace being the better team. I think Villa have the capacity to take in some of the pressure, whereas I think this Crystal Palace team maybe don't. They have the capacity to score, but I think they probably need, if you gave both teams 2 XG, I'd be saying that Aston Villa are probably more likely to score more goals than Palace. So I think Palace are going to be the better team in the game. They're probably going to have a bit more of the ball and that sort of stuff. But I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. And then it's still game on. 6 games to go, 4 points between them. Let's move on to the other game that's happening on Sunday, the final one this game week, because there's only 4. Sunday at 3 o'clock, it's Spurs hosting Brighton. This one at Brisbane Road, 7th against 5th. As I mentioned at the start, Spurs will go above Brighton if they can win this game. And here are another 2 teams that are not in good form. Spurs have lost their last 3 in the league, albeit that is to Man United, Arsenal and Man City, so not the easiest run of games. Brighton, however, have lost 5 away from home. I think from memory, they haven't won in the WSL since November. It's not looking good for Brighton at the moment. Spurs, we'll get onto them in a moment because they're sort of in a particular moment at the moment with their form. But for Brighton, do you think this might be the game where we might see them actually pick up a win, or is this going to be a step too far still?
It's a really interesting one, isn't it? This game, it's another one that's very hard to predict this weekend. I think, last time I was predicting a 0-0 in that last game. I don't see it being 0-0 this one. I don't think either team is going to keep a clean sheet here. Obviously they've got some tremendous attacking players on both sides. Brighton's woeful away form is really concerning. I think their confidence took a hit because obviously the way that they like to play, they like to get the ball down and play it along the ground. And I think their confidence took a hit from losing after the winter break to Liverpool and then that heavy defeat in the Cup to Arsenal at home 4-0. And a lot of those goals that Arsenal scored were them trying to play out from the back and providing Arsenal with those opportunities. And I just feel that they've lost a bit of confidence there. And so from a Brighton perspective, you'd be hoping that 2-2 draw last weekend against Chelsea will be the confidence boost they need to try and go and get something out of this game. I don't think that Tottenham are unbeatable at home. They've struggled, and even the games that they've won at home haven't been very convincing. That Leicester win, I don't think they had a shot on target in that whole game. And then the win against West Ham was it was a very late own goal from Amber Tiziak, an unlucky own goal from Amber Tiziak to give them the win there. I think for Brighton, they've got players like Guro Bergsvand in defence, who's blocked more shots than anyone in the league this season. And then one of my favourite stats this season is Marissa Olislagers, who's had 2 shots on target this season and scored 2 goals, which is very fun. So maybe she'll have a third and keep that run up this weekend. But I think there's going to be goals. I wouldn't be surprised if it ended in a draw, to be honest. How do you see it going, Sam?
it's a little bit of a matchup problem, I think, for Brighton. They haven't beaten Spurs in their last 6 meetings. The last time they beat Spurs was in 2021, so a few years ago now. It doesn't feel like 2021 should be that far away, but alas, it is. I don't know exactly what I think the score is going to be, so I'm going to sort of stall a little bit while we have a think about that. But I do think Spurs will probably win this game. They're still yet to draw a game at home this season, which is a little bit of a weird quirk in the data, but they have performed quite well in some games. I know, like you've just mentioned, they've had some stinkers, for lack of a better word, but they've also had some good performances. The last game, I was at it against Man City at home. Man City came out 2-1 winners, but Spurs played really well, especially in the first half. They obviously had a game plan. They executed it quite well with their pressing. And I think that against the Brighton side, who also like to have possession, they're sort of like a Man City 2.0, well, not a Man City 2.0, whatever like Man City, but not as good, is what I'm trying to get at. They play in a similar way. They like to make a lot of passes. They like to have a lot of possession, but they just don't quite have the same cutting edge as Man City. So I think Spurs, if they can do well against City, albeit not win, they can do well against a Brighton team that will be playing in a slightly similar way. Brighton also, as well as Spurs not drawing at home, Brighton haven't drawn an away game this year. They've won 1-1, lost 6, including losing their last 5. One quite interesting stat that I didn't realise until I was doing some research for this was about Nikita Paris and Bethany England. Bethany England scored 8 goals this season, second top scorer in the league, 5 of those being the opener for a game. Nikita Paris is Brighton's joint top goal scorer with Seiko, albeit Seiko scored a hat-trick on the opening day, so he's only scored 2 since then. But all of Nikita Paris's 5 goals in the WSL this season have been the opening goal in the game. So I don't know if there's some sort of mental thing of that. I don't know if it's just a coincidence. But to score 5 goals this season and for all of them to be the first goal in a game doesn't seem like that much of a coincidence. I think there might be something else to it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see her open this game as well, because I can see both teams scoring. But I guess eventually I probably should answer the question of how do I think this game's going to go. I do think both teams are going to score in this game, but I do think it's probably going to be a Spurs win. I'm actually going to go a bit more confident than I've been on some other ones and go for a 3-1 Spurs win. I think that's purely because I think Brighton could concede a goal or two before half-time, and then at that point they're going to be having to take a few more risks, play a bit more expansively to get further up the pitch, and I think that's where Spurs can beat them. We've seen Robert Villaham do some different things recently. He brought on Olivia Holt against Man City purely through injury because Martha Thomas had to go off, but she did really well. We've seen Charlie Grant start playing a bit further up the pitch. We've seen Evelina Summanen come back. Drew Spence has been really good this season, especially in the first half. And obviously, when you've got Bethany England up front, you've always got a good chance of scoring. So I'm going to go for a Spurs win, and I'm going to go for 3-1, which, as an Arsenal fan, I kind of don't want to say, but it is how I think the game's going to go.
It's interesting. I think it's going to be really interesting, this match. Because I think a big boost for Spurs coming into this game is the fact that Kit Graham trained with the squad again last week for the first time since she tore ACL in pre-season in August. So I think just obviously I doubt she'll play, but just having her back in the camp training on grass, I can imagine that that's going to be really good. She's such a leader for that group. I think that could really help them. And I think it's actually a really definitive time in Tottenham season right now, because obviously, this game is against the team who's been in 5th place for the longest time, really. So they need to, and obviously they can win and go into 5th place. So, this really is the kind of acid test as to whether they are the 5th best team in the league at the moment. And it's a crucial couple of weeks, because then obviously they have West Ham after that. And, if they did end up losing to West Ham, and they lost on the weekend as well, then West Ham could go above them. So, I think it's really important for Robert Villaham that they get a result in this game. I think Bethany England, of course, is such a huge player for them. It's interesting with Paris and England on either side. They're both striving for that place in Stattorino Weigmann's squad for Euro 2025 this summer. And and they're both having really impressive seasons as well. I think I was looking at it earlier, and the XG stats are quite interesting for both of them because Bethany England has scored 8 goals from 6.4 expected goals, and Paris has scored 5 goals from 5 expected goals. So I feel like you rarely see that, but it's going to be interesting. I think I'm going to be more on the fence than yourself on this one. I think it's going to be 2-2 is my prediction for this one.
2-2 will be much more exciting, to be fair, than 3-1. I think when you don't quite know how the game's going to go, it always just adds that little bit. And obviously, with it being Sunday 3:00, it'll be a good prime time viewing as well. But they are the games this week. It's not actually taken as long to review as I thought, even though we have been here for an hour already. Blame Man City for that one. Let's move on then from the looking back, and we're going to move on to a bit about Fantasy WSL. Yes, this is the Fantasy WSL section here on Decoding the WSL, where we take a bit more of a deep dive into Fantasy WSL each week. This week, the thing that I have got to look out for is transfers. There's no point going over the matches and the points like last week. I want to have a look ahead to what's coming up this week. Friend of the pod, Izzy from Fantasy WSL, has kindly sent over some data to me about the biggest transfers so far this week. Let's start with the players that are being transferred in. So the player who has been transferred in the most this week, I'm a bit surprised at this so far, is Bunny Shaw. She's been transferred in more than twice as much as any other player, which is strange because Man City don't have a game this week. Obviously, Man City and Chelsea are playing in the Subway Cup final, so neither of those teams have games. They played it midweek last week, hence there was a double game week. And so West Ham and Leicester don't have a game either. So I was a bit surprised to see that. The second most transferred in player is, I'm kind of glad and kind of not glad, because I've had this player for quite a while. I've said quite a lot this season that I thought from quite early on, after not knowing who she was at the start of the season, I said I thought she was really good. And people are starting to cotton on to it. But also it means that I'm not going to get more points than other people at the same time. But Mikato from Crystal Palace, they obviously have a home game against Aston Villa this weekend. She is the second most transferred in player, more than any Arsenal player, more than any Manchester United player. I thought that was quite interesting. And then rounding off the top 5, Mariona Caldente, Hanoka Hayashi, and Hannah Hampton. So 5 players from 5 different teams, including 2 players actually, because Hannah Hampton's in there as well, that don't have a game this week. Are there any players in there that you're going to be looking to transfer in this week, Tom?
I don't think so. I have my Cato already, so I'm happy with her in my team. And obviously I'm not going to be transferring in Bunny Shaw, but she is that good though. I wouldn't be surprised if she picks up some points despite not playing in the league. She's that much gold dust in Fantasy WSL terms. But I think, it's an interesting one. This week I think is really important because you've got this blank, and then so I'm going to make a couple of changes. I was thinking of bringing in Lily Woodham, who's a visionary this week. And I obviously Aston Villa struggling to score goals at the moment, and she's got an attacking threat. She got an assist against Brighton a few weeks ago, so that was kind of my thinking. And I might transfer, and now stick with me here. I might transfer out Shaw and bring in another striker, maybe Bethany England, and with the intention of using the clean slate next week, so to kind of dead end my team this week, and then use the clean slate next week. I had an absolute mare last week, Sam. I used my the wall chip on the double game week, and not a single clean sheet.
Oh no,
not a single one.
I assume you are stacked with Man City and Chelsea players in your defence.
Yep.
was supposed to play my triple captain last week, but forgot. So I've still got that. If I was more sensible, I think is probably the best way of wording it, I would have kept my clean slate to use either for this week or for next week. But a few weeks ago, I was doing so badly and I had so many players out at the same time that I was like, I just need to use it. So I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do this week. Let's just go over the players transferred out before to give me a bit more thinking time. But the most transferred out player, more than twice as much as any other player, kind of unsurprisingly, is Guro Brighton. She's obviously very expensive in this game and doesn't have a game this week. The next most transferred out player is Alessia Russo with 426 people so far. That's one that surprises me a bit. I think that's not so much. Obviously, she has a game this week, but I think that's probably more because she's just not getting as many points as she was before Christmas. It was obviously a bit different when Renée Slagers first came in. The other, or sort of rounding off the top 5 of players being transferred out, these are less surprising. Becky Spencer, obviously, was for a period number 1 at Spurs and is no longer. Viv Miedemar and Rebecca Knack, who both don't have a game this week. Those are a little less surprising. There is someone in this list. I've got the top 15 in front of me. I won't go through all of them, but there is someone in this list, which is Amanda Nilden, that I have at the moment. I wasn't really considering taking her out, since they're at home to Brighton. But if other people are doing it, there might be something I need to research in there. I currently have 5 players not playing this game week, so I'm definitely going to make at least 2. If not, I might spend an extra 4 points to make 3. Naomi Girma's coming out because that was a bad choice. She obviously went off injured on her debut. She's worth, I think, 7.5 million, so I can definitely get someone good in there. Or I might even transfer out someone like Jill Rord or Mary Fowler as well and get someone in as a midfielder or a forward at the same time. But yeah, I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do yet. I probably will leave it to Friday lunchtime just to see what comes out in the press conferences and stuff like that. But I am looking to have no more than 2 players from City and Chelsea combined, and then to transfer some more people in next week. So that is the Fantasy WSL section done for another week. I do like having a look at that, and we will be having Izzy from Fantasy WSL on future podcasts. I think actually from memory, I might have got a booked on for next week. So you'll hear from her again then. But talking of podcasts generally, before we go today, because we've got Tom on with us, I want to give you a chance to plug your podcast because you have, alongside friend of the pod, Jamie, and Beth as well, you have started a new podcast, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, so we started a new podcast. It's called The Halfway Line Show. We essentially discuss the goings on in women's football we're trying to every week as life permits it, but as I'm sure you'll know, Sam. But yeah, so we're trying as hard as we can to do that. But we've filmed or we've recorded 2 episodes now, so they're both up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Give it a listen. Jamie and Beth are they're such experts. It's a pleasure sharing the microphone with them. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far. We play a little pointless, goalless game at the end of each podcast as well. So yeah, we're enjoying it.
It is a good listen. I've listened to both of them, and it is good fun because you don't just cover the WSL like we do on this podcast. You do the whole world. I think you covered WSL, NWSL, League Cup final, the Irish League. I think you covered something else as well, another league. Can't remember off the top of my head. In the last episode, you really sort of touch on a lot of points as well as getting a game in because every good podcast needs its own game.
Yeah. We'll have to have you on, Sam. But that would be really good to get your statistical input on everything.
And make a guest appearance. And I will say as well, something else you do on the podcast is you all wear a piece of stash, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Which I love because I wouldn't say I'm intentionally a collector, but I have collected a lot of shirts over the year. I think I've got something like 60 different football shirts, as well as some jackets and stuff like that as well. So yeah, if I do ever come on, I will have a good one to wear, I promise.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I wore a shirt today, a little Leon MasterCard number from because you had a great last time we recorded this. Obviously, I don't know if anyone's seen, but Sam was wearing a beautiful AC Milan away shirt. Was it 2007 AC Milan away? It was, a
Yeah,
real classic.
yeah, the one where they won the Champions League and it had Kaka on the back as well. Yeah, I like that shirt a lot. Yeah, no, I've got a few that I'm proud of. But yeah, thank you very much, Tom, for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed appearance number 2. There will be more, I'm sure.
Oh, thanks, Sam. My pleasure. My pleasure. It was nice to get the start this time after subbing in last time.
Oh yeah, of course, I forgot about that. Yeah, last time you were on, it was a super sub for your podcast co-host Jamie.
Yeah.
But no, you were an outright starter this time. But yeah, thank you for coming on, and listener, thank you for tuning in to Decoding the WSL as ever. If you enjoyed today's episode, do make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow me at Stattorino on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok. And Tom, do you want to give your at so people can follow you?
Yeah, so my at is on Twitter is TomMahersy. And yeah, just searching Tom Maher on Blue Sky should be able to find me. And then obviously the Halfway Line is the publication that I write for. And we've got that podcast, so go look it up if you'd like.
Go look it up indeed. Both the Halfway Line and the podcast. I can recommend both. But yeah, thank you again, Tom, for joining. Thank you again, listener, for listening. And I'll speak to you at the next one.